OSHA's mission is to ensure the health and safety of America's workers. Enforcement plays an important role in the agency's efforts to reduce workplace injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. This video describes the general OSHA inspection process, as well as special considerations under the Regional Emphasis Program for fertilizer-grade ammonium nitrate and agricultural anhydrous ammonia facilities. Compliance Safety and Health Officers, or compliance officers, are experienced, well-trained industrial hygienists and safety professionals. Their goal is to ensure the compliance with OSHA requirements. They also help employers reduce on-the-job hazards. Before conducting an inspection, a compliance officer researches the inspection history of the employer, reviews industry operations and processes, and the standards most likely to apply. Once the compliance officer arrives on site and enters the facility, the inspection begins with the presentation of credentials. During the opening conference, the compliance officer will explain why OSHA is inspecting the workplace and describe the scope of the inspection, walk-around procedures, employee representation, and the need for employee interviews. The employer is asked to select a representative to accompany the compliance officer during the inspection.
There are three basic parts to any OSHA inspection. There's the opening conference, which was what we're doing now. I'll need to get some basic information about the company. I also want to give you a list of programs that we'd like to look at through that process. Then we'll have the walk around where we'll actually walk out into the facility and see the areas where the employees are working. Also, then at the end, we'll have a closing conference where we explain any issues or findings that we have with that. So we'll start with kind of the list of things we'd like to make sure we look at during the inspection. The first one's your OSHA 300 forms. That's a 300 and 300A. That's an injury and illness form that employers are required to keep. We'd like to at least get the last 5 years. We'd like to also look at your PPE hazard assessment. So a document that indicates what personal protective equipment is required to be used by the employees for the different tasks. Any emergency action plan that you have already developed.
Sure, and we have one of those.
All right. We'd also like to review your hazard communication program. So that oftentimes includes safety data sheets and or training.
Right, and we have a safety data sheet binder. So.
Okay. We'd also like to review your lockout program.
Okay.
All right. And then if you have any confined spaces, we'd like to review your confined space entry program. And if you've completed any permits in the last 12 months, we'd like to take a look at those. Now, based on our interviews, based on our observations, we would also like to look at some training records, either related to these programs and or anything that we might see out in the workplace. That might include plain view hazards. So if we see something as we're walking around that we think could be a hazard, we'll stop and address that issue right at that time.
Okay.
We would like to interview employees after we've walked through the programs and seen the workplace. We would like to do private employee interviews.
Okay, can I be included in those interviews?
We ask that they be in private for the actual interview process.
Okay.
Under Section 11C of the OSHA Act, employees do have the right to bring up safety and health concerns to management and to OSHA without being retaliated against.
Remember, the compliance officer will ask for materials during the opening conference, including OSHA record-keeping forms 300 and 300A, PPE hazard assessment, emergency action plan, hazard communication program, lockout program, confined space entry program, including permits, and training records. The next step of the inspection process is the walk-around. The compliance officer and designated representatives will walk through the areas of the workplace covered by the inspection. Together, they will identify potential hazards that could lead to employee injury or illness. Compliance officers try to minimize work interruptions during inspection and will keep any observed trade secrets confidential. There are several specific areas the compliance officer will look at during the walk-around under this emphasis program. Common equipment at agricultural supply facilities includes a belt or screw conveyor to move solid material from transport to bins. The compliance officer will review machine guarding and lockout procedures to ensure they are in compliance with OSHA requirements. Ammonium nitrate is commonly stored in bulk in 3-sided bins. OSHA standards require the bins to be constructed of wood or aluminum coated to prevent ammonium nitrate impregnation, or of a material that resists impregnation. Anhydrous ammonia is commonly stored in a horizontal pressure vessel known as a bullet. OSHA requires that bullets are built and tested to the 1968 edition of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code. Compliance with more recent editions of this ASME code is also acceptable, as they provide the same degree of safety as the 1968 edition. OSHA's standard on anhydrous ammonia storage requires that electrical equipment be built and maintained in accordance with OSHA's electrical standards and be general purpose or weather resistant. In addition to these core areas, OSHA will want to address machine guarding, including moving belts, in-running nips and exposed gears, lockout program issues, powered industrial truck program, safe material stacking, hazard communication for other chemicals handled, respiratory protection, and walking working surfaces. During the walk-around, the compliance officer will consult privately with individual employees. Common questions may include, how long have you worked for the company? Have you or anyone else been injured or had any close calls on the job? Does the employer provide personal protective equipment? How often does the employer provide training, and what is the training composed of? Is there anything you would like to change to make working conditions safer? At the conclusion of the interview, the compliance officer will inform the employee of their rights and ask if there are any questions. After the walk-around, a compliance officer holds a closing conference with the employer and designated representatives to discuss the findings, possible corrective procedures, and reasonable timelines for correction. The compliance officer also discusses potential courses of action an employer may take following an inspection, as well as available consultation services.
So following the OSHA inspection, what will happen is I'll go back and put together a report. Now there were those things that we just discussed are apparent violations. And so that information will go to the area director, who will make a decision on whether or not a citation is issued or not.
Okay.
If and when a citation is issued, you'll have 15 days from the time you receive that to take some sort of action. Your first action is to do, if you decide to do nothing, then it will become a final order, and you won't be able to get the citations amended or changed, and penalty will become, what the penalty is on as it was issued, and the full penalty will be due. Your next option is to take advantage of what's called the informal conference. Now that's a conference that you set up with the area director to discuss any issues you have with the citations. You have the ability to address the penalties at that meeting. You can address if you needed additional time for abatement or to take corrective action for those issues. That's all part of the options that can happen in an informal conference.
Okay.
Ultimately, in an informal conference, what the agency would like is to reach an informal settlement agreement with you. And that's something that they would negotiate with you at that conference.
Okay.
Finally, you also have the right to contest the citations. And at that point, the case would go to what's called the Review Commission. And that's a group that hears OSHA cases. And so there's a legal process for going through that. So any questions on any of those items?
Yeah, it was a 15-day period. Is that what you were saying?
Right. So from after you receive the citation, the day you receive them, that actually starts a 15-day working period.
Okay.
And so that's when we're able to have the informal conference, and that's the time frame by which you'd have to contest the citation if you're interested in doing that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
This video provides a brief overview of the OSHA inspection process under the Fertilizer Storage REP. Ensuring compliance with OSHA standards is an integral part of the agency's mission to keep workers safe and healthy. A safe workplace benefits everyone. OSHA uses a balance of enforcement and compliance assistance to achieve this shared goal. That's why OSHA is working to give employers the knowledge and tools they need to comply with their obligations and provide safety information to employees. OSHA's on-site consultation program offers no cost and confidential assistance to small and medium-sized businesses. The program helps businesses identify workplace hazards, provides advice for compliance with OSHA standards, and assists in establishing and improving safety and health programs. For more information about OSHA inspections and compliance assistance resources, please visit OSHA.gov or call 800-321-OSHA. That is 800-321-6742. This video and content is not a standard or regulation and creates no new legal obligations. The content is advisory and informational and is intended to assist employers in providing a safe and healthful workplace.